Welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. So people have been transfixed by this Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni lawsuit back and forth. They were obviously in the hit blockbuster It Ends With Us, and that's based on the Colleen Hoover book. And Colleen Hoover's books are apparently like if crack and meth were all wrapped up into a heroin Twinkie. The people cannot stop consuming them. They love Colleen Hoover's work. People liked this movie. They didn't like each other. And I have to say, hearing more and more about their lawsuits, we've been conditioned to want to pick a side and be like, Team Jennifer Aniston, Team Britney. But here, I have to say, both parties seem kind of gross. I know if you expect your woman card to be punched, you have to be like, I'm Team Blake all the way. But it kind of sounds like you've got two sociopathic people who are now out trying to sociopath each other through various legal briefs. Joining me now to discuss, let's talk to Lexie Rigden again. She's a criminal defense attorney. We had so much fun talking last time. So, Lexie, give me your take on this case and a basic outline of what these suits are and what both sides are complaining about.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So Blake Lively initially filed a complaint in California with
Mrs. Ryan Reynolds / a gossip girl.
Ryan Reynolds' wife, Taylor Swift's bestie. She was a former gossip girl. So she ended up filing suit first, and she filed suit against Justin Baldoni, who was her co-star in that movie.
And was the director.
Right, the director, the person that optioned the book, really the person that did all of the heavy lifting. So she filed a lawsuit against him, alleging a lot of intentional infliction of emotional distress, sexual harassment, retaliation, a whole host of stuff.
And it was pretty okay. I just want to outline some of the stuff that she claimed in her suit because it was pretty gross. Like if you just read her side of it, you're like, oh my God, this guy is awful. He should never work again. He's worse than if Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein had a baby. So she is saying that he would show her pictures of nude women, talk about his sexual exploits at length. He would barge into her trailer while she was breastfeeding her baby. And then the creepiest thing of all, he would tell her that he was having dreams about her dead father and what her dead, like, that is so incredibly disgusting and manipulative if that stuff is true. Mm-hmm. But there was something about the story, and it was the fact that her husband came to her defense. And I almost felt like they were a little heavy-handed and tried to bully this guy into doing the film their way. So she files this thing, makes all these claims, and then what does Justin Baldoni do?
So when I first read it, I agree with you. I thought, oh my gosh, this is really explosive. I've never been a huge Blake Lively fan. She kind of is in a Meghan Markle type category to me, where she just kind of seems a little phony to me, and not really a girl's girl. But that's the price you pay when you're a celebrity for people like me having opinions of you. And I'm sure she doesn't care. She's very beautiful and wealthy. And
I'm sorry, but that's what you sign up for. When you put yourself out there and you're trying to monetize how many people know about you and how many people talk about you, people are also going to be critical and analytical, and they're going to look at your motivation, and they're going to look at the life that you put out there and try and discern whether or not it is something aspirational that inspires them, or if it's just an image that they're trying to get rich off of, which people are put off by.
Right. And so that's why I don't reserve my judgment here, because, that's exactly, you hit the nail on the head. That's what she signed up for, being a celebrity. So some random attorney in New Jersey is going to judge her. So I've never been a huge Blake Lively fan. I haven't really gotten all the hype. But when I read the allegations in the one-sided complaint, as they are, I mean, they're always written in a one-sided way, I thought, oh my gosh, this is terrible. What a terrible on-set environment. Nobody should be subjected to that. There had to have been a reason she made all of these 17 demands where she said, I'm not coming back to work unless you respect these things. And then Baldoni's lawyer, Brian Friedman, who's a high-profile guy, he's Megyn Kelly's lawyer. I think he represents a lot of high-profile people. He said, quote, "We are going to sue Blake Lively into oblivion we have a bombshell lawsuit coming out, and basically everything she said is false. And so I was salivating when it came out a few days ago, and it paints a really compelling picture that I'm not sure we're necessarily in Amber Heard, Johnny Depp territory where you're going to have everybody completely against Blake. But there are definitely two sides to these stories. The breastfeeding one has been a big topic, people talking about where he would come into her trailer when she was breastfeeding. Well, there's a text message included in his lawsuit where she says, "Come on into my trailer. I'm pumping. We can run lines." I mean, and this lawyer did a really good job in this. This is almost like this almost reads like a novel. I mean, if anybody is bored, they should read this counterclaim. It's very.
But that's, as you know, as an attorney, that's the new style. Is to, to basically publish things that are as salacious as possible, because that's really the only way to get people talking about them. But, a lot of this is unsubstantiated, but he tries to, counterclaim with a little bit more substantiation that none of this ever happened. It didn't happen in the way she claims, and it certainly wasn't one-sided. So what stood out for you in his filing that kind of neutralized the sympathy for her?
Oh boy, that's a really great question. So there were certain things that he attacked head on. And I have to say, to your point, this was clearly written for people to read.
Yes.
Is he going to get $400 million from Blake Lively? I don't know. But I think what was more important to him is his agency, the William Morris agency, who dumped him the day after she sued him, and the general public like us who are talking about this. He wants them to read it and get his side of the story. So whether he actually prevails financially, he wants to prevail in the court of public opinion. But what stood out to me were the things that this counterclaim pointed out, which were in direct contrast to the things that she had actually wanted. For example, don't come into my trailer when I'm breastfeeding. Well, you're sending him a text message saying you're pumping, come in and run lines.
But there is a difference. So as a mom who has both breastfed and pumped, a big difference. I used to pump when I was on the air, when I was doing a talk radio show, because the radio station that I was working at wouldn't give me time during a 3-hour show. And I had to. I had no choice. It would have been untenable and incredibly painful. And I didn't mind. Like, I knew my co-host very well. I would throw a big cape over and just try not to get the microphone to pick up the sound of the pump going, zh, 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 zh. But there's a big difference between that and actually having an infant in your arms at your breast while you're bonding and they are feeding. Those are two very different things. So I think that's weird of him to conflate the two.
Well, he did say that the text message referenced pumping, but the counterclaim does say that she had breastfed in front of him before. So, I mean, I thought that it might be a weird dynamic, but the way that it was painted in the complaint was essentially without any context. And so you have this kind of knee-jerk gut reaction to it, and then you actually see the counterclaim, and you're like, oh, well, maybe it wasn't as sinister after all. There was another allegation. I mean, she's basically accused him of sexual harassment. There was a very vulgar joke that she made a vulgar joke. And listen, I am not saying that just because you make a vulgar joke that you're asking to be sexually harassed. But when you're saying I've been sexually harassed and mistreated and I feel uncomfortable, and then you're texting a vulgar joke about suppositories to this person, that's one of those things that makes the reader, the public who's judging these people go, okay, well, I didn't know that. That wasn't part of.
Did they have an understanding? Were they communicating like bros? Because I have people, and we send messages back and forth that are absolutely filthy because we're trying to outshock each other. I wouldn't want that kind of message from my daughter's bio teacher.
Well, that's very true. Exactly.
Context is very, very important, and we all know that we have relationships that change, that evolve, and sometimes they sour. So things may start out one way, and then someone gives you the creeps, and you try to slowly back out of the relationship, but they are assuming that you're still texting like filthy bros.
Yeah, exactly. And they kind of were, but obviously there's a point where if that's not acceptable, it's not acceptable anymore. You don't have carte blanche to do it. But by all accounts from this counterclaim, they were very close. He would come over, he would hang out with her, hold the baby, make lots of jokes. And the messages they write to each other are just effusive. You're for her to him, you're everything in a creator I could have asked for. So at some point they had
Actors are the worst.
Oh my gosh, I know. I mean, she refers to herself as Khaleesi. I know I've never seen Game of Thrones, but the collective ick of people saying, "Oh my God, how can you refer?" But I get that the context is obnoxious, I guess. And oh, it's so self-important. I mean, these two act like they're splitting the atom. I mean, they really do. They don't act like they're making a Netflix film about some, I don't want to call it cheesy. I think that the film, despite it being about domestic violence, does have its cheesy elements. But really, they act like they're doing something so much more important for society than they really are. It's kind of nauseating, the both of them.
Don't go anywhere. More Kennedy Saves the World right after this.
It's interesting because, when you read into the story, they were both marketing the film from very different places. It was almost like he was proud to be a sociopath and like, yeah, this is, almost autobiographical, where this was almost a vanity piece for her, which was a launching point for her to pimp her hair care and alcohol products. And, and so she wanted it like, who's going to buy hair care products and alcohol and go see a rom-com? Like that's a very specific yet large audience, but you're going to want to appeal to them like, go get drunk after you've done your hair and then come see the movie. And people are like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. But and he's saying, no, this is about domestic violence. Like this is really heavy. This is a movie about manipulation and boundaries. And those are two very, like, I would have to be in a completely different mood to consume both of those movies the way they were marketed, because they don't sound like the same movie.
That's very true. And she yelled at a reporter, which I'm sure you've seen because it's gone viral, where the reporter says, "Congrats on your little bump," when she's pregnant, and she looks at her and she's not pregnant, the reporter, and says, "Congrats on your little bump." And then it goes on in the interview where the reporter says, and this was about a different movie, but it was like, tell me about the clothes. Did you like wearing the clothes? And she's like, I wonder if anybody would be asking the guys about the clothes. And then you read this counterclaim about how focused she was on the wardrobe and her weight and all these other things that, had somebody asked her about it and did ask her about it in an interview, it was like, oh, that's beneath me. That's, so trivial.
I don't think about those things. I'm a creator. I am an actor.
Exactly. That's exactly it. But the thing that sent a chill up my spine, which that probably sounds really dramatic, but the fact that when I'm reading his complaint, it really, or counterclaim to be accurate, it really does seem like she had him over a barrel. He doesn't have near the star power that she does, doesn't have near
her husband.
Or her husband. I mean, she's got best friends in the industry. Taylor Swift's her best friend. I mean, the name Taylor is redacted from this, but it's very clear that that's who they're talking about. So it was basically, and he said this in here, essentially, if Blake wanted it, I had to do it, or she was going to leave the production. I was going to lose all of this money. I mean, she had him over a barrel, which is why he is suing her for extortion, which again, not sure that is going to succeed legally, but I think it's more just to let everybody know that everything that went on was because he was afraid she was going to pull out of this movie. So agreeing to that 17-point list of demands, which half of them he didn't agree to or actually has a counter to them, he was like, fine, I'll do it because we need to resume filming. And those are just things that, as a lay person that's not in the movie industry, we don't really think about. How a big, powerful star on a production who doesn't really need your production or your money can just say, if I don't have control over this, I'm not doing it.
How many people do you think Taylor Swift and Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have had canceled? Like how many? I would be curious, like, have they ever hired a crisis PR firm to do what the PR firm was going to do on Justin Baldoni's behalf to her? I'm guessing the answer would be yes. Of course, they know people like that. They probably have people like that on payroll, on retainer. Who do exactly what these people were hired to do in a targeted way. I bet they have them there at the ready and they know how to do it. And that's why pissing people like that off is so scary, because you can be canceled. You absolutely can be blacklisted because no one wants to upset a cash cow like Taylor Swift, a once in a generation billionaire dynamo. Everyone wants access to her. She can sell anything. anyone in her orbit is invaluable. And, anyone who runs afoul of that, I bet that's why William Morris didn't even have to be told to drop the guy. And was she a William Morris, a WME client before? Was she at the agency as well?
I think that's what it was. I think they were both there. And then when this came out, the first one that was filed in California, they dropped him the next day. And when it first came out and I read it, it sounded so bad that I was like, well, I'm not for canceling people with unsubstantiated allegations, but I guess I get it. And then when I read his counterclaim, I'm like, wait a minute. Justice for Justin.
Yeah.
So it was
no, but you know that WME reps her, and that means that they probably rep her husband, and it's like, and that's why they combine, because that's how agencies make money, is they package everything. So they package 2 stars. The other star is also the director. They probably represent Colleen Hoover, so they are all clients of WME. So they make, this big global commission off of packaging everything. So it's like, to them, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are going to make a lot more money in the long run than, this guy who, I doubt, I don't know Colleen Hoover's oeuvre too well. So I don't know if there's a sequel to this book and they want Justin Baldoni for part 2. But if not, then he sounds... What's that?
Allegation in the counterclaim. They sort of rhetorically ask, why would Blake want to take over this movie? Well, one of our theories is that she wants to be in charge of It Starts With Us. So like the prequel. And I'm not sure that's an actual book, or that's just something that, since this was successful, somebody would essentially write. But that's one of their theories about why she needed to wrest this much control. And it really does seem like she really did try to act as a director when that wasn't her role in the movie.
Yeah, no, I bet she's an entitled pain in the ass. And, I don't think there's a hero in this scenario. I think it just goes to show you that human beings are more complicated. We love to oversimplify things because it makes us feel better, and it makes us feel virtuous if we can choose sides. But in this case, I don't know that we can do that. And people should be more critical of megastars because, they make a lot of money. They are very entitled. They get an incredible pass in life. And sometimes that entitlement can make other people's lives pretty miserable. And I think, Blake Lively has a pretty good track record of treating people she feels who are beneath her like crap.
And to that point, what the most egregious thing, because they have so many things that have come out of like times she's put her foot in her mouth during interviews. And the worst thing that I've seen is she made a joke during kind of like a round table with the Gossip Girl cast about, not all of us or none of us were born in a cage. Well, maybe some of us, as a reference to the fact that her co-star Leighton Meester was born while her mother was in prison. So Leighton Meester was born in a prison. So when I heard that,
that's so cool.
Just like, and then saying she did another one with the Gossip Girl cast, making a joke about how she works with trained monkeys. Some of you guys, it just honestly, just stuff where it's like, all right, everybody says dumb stuff sometimes, but when you have an entire, on YouTube, those montage, you have 20 minutes of Blake Lively being a mean girl, and all of her comments really aren't great, you start to think, well, maybe my gut feeling about this person, maybe it was right.
Well, I really thank you so much for being here, Lexie. It's always good to talk to you. I love your legal expertise, and I love a little bit of gossip.
Oh, same. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It has been a pleasure. This has been Kennedy Saves the World. I'm Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app. Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.